The National Libertarian Party has screwed up yet again, tweeting nonsense about the Federal Reserve. Why should we end the Fed? What's in the news with stories on trick-or-treating as a crime? Florida man faces prison for making grills. Do it for the children in California. Afghanistan war less and less popular. Inflation in Venezuela. And cops home invasion. And a statist-gonna-state segment on Facebook censoring information by purging 800 accounts and pages. This episode is brought to you by Zencash, now known as Horizon, a cryptocurrency that infuses privacy, anonymity, and security done right. Also brought to you by Free Talk Live, providing you with fresh, pro-liberty content 7 days a week on more than 180 radio stations across the country.
Welcome to The Lava Flow, channeling the flow of information to the libertarian, anarcho-capitalist, voluntarist, and agorist community. Find us at thelavaflow.com. Here's your host, Roger Paxton.
Thank you for joining me this week from the home of Stark, New Hampshire, which served as a prisoner of war camp in World War II that held around 250 German and Austrian prisoners. This is the show that will bring you the people, places, and events that everyone in the Liberty Rebellion needs to know. You can catch me on Twitter at the Lava Flow Pod. This is episode 108, End the Fed, and it's Tuesday, October 16th, 2018, when there have already been more than 756 people killed by police this year, and the United States debt clock shows us at more than $21,626,700 million in debt. What's wrestling my jimmies this week? You're about to find out. Let's do it to it. The National Libertarian Party has fucked up yet again with a tweet. On October 12th, someone using that account tweeted the following: Libertarians have differing thoughts on whether we should have a Fed, but it is not wise for the Fed to become a political football. Hashtag Trump/Congress should not control it. They can question it and have opinions, but the Fed, if it exists, should be independent from their control. Wait a minute. If it exists? What the actual fuck? I mean, why does some non-libertarian moron have access to the LP National Twitter page? The National LP has, of course, since removed the tweet after a massive backlash, including a reply tweet from Representative Thomas Massie that said, "Did Bill Weld, Gary Johnson, or Paul Krugman write this tweet?" You know shit has gone bad in the National LP when a libertarian-leaning Republican calls you out for your tweets. Look, I've been railing against the National LP for years now, you guys know that, and this is just yet another reason. First of all, if it exists, what is that shit? Of course the Fed should not exist. And the LP's assertion that libertarians have differing thoughts on whether we should have a Fed, bull fucking shit. Maybe LP members have differing opinions on this, but actual libertarians have no such differing opinions. So let's take a look at why actual libertarians want an end to the Federal Reserve immediately. First, we should never tire of repeating the simple truth that, yes indeed, the dollar has lost 90% of its purchasing power to monetary inflation since the Fed was created. This is not a complicated argument, and it especially rings true with older people who remember how much they paid for homes, cars, appliances, and the like many decades ago. It's also easy to depict visually, as the St. Louis Federal Reserve's own chart shows a steady decline in the purchasing power of the consumer dollar since the creation of the Federal Reserve. Second, we should consistently remind people that inflation is a tax, plain and simple, and a regressive tax at that. And taxation, as we all know, is theft. Defenders of the Fed frequently respond to that point by reminding us that people don't just stuff money in mattresses, but rather earn interest via simple bank deposits or returns via investments. Never mind that these same Fed defenders routinely support near zero, or even negative interest rates. The difference between the interest rate one earns on a simple money market or savings account and the real inflation rate is effectively a tax. Whether you believe government inflation statistics or alternate statistics as compiled by shadowstats.com, for example, you are losing money by holding it in an account that pays interest at a rate below inflation. The loss is the Fed tax. Suppose today you put $100,000 in a bank account that pays 0 interest. Even if the Fed magically targets and holds inflation exactly at 2% for the next decade, which is damn near impossible, in 10 years you will need nearly $122,000 to buy what $100,000 buys today, in only 10 years. This Fed tax is also highly regressive because people with less wealth and financial acumen tend to hold savings in cash, simple checking accounts, or 401ks. Wealthier individuals, meanwhile, have diversified portfolios and can chase yields through much more sophisticated equity and bond investments. Retirees suffer as well because it's harder for them to go out and find new sources of earned income. The Fed tax is real, and it is easy to explain to the average person. When the dollar used to be backed by gold or silver, people could simply save money for retirement by just saving cash, often in the form of gold and silver coins. The money would even gain in value because the economy was becoming more productive, reducing consumer prices. But since the Federal Reserve was founded, that is no longer an option. Saving money in the bank is for suckers because it doesn't even earn enough interest to keep up with inflation. If you want your retirement savings to be worth anything by the time you retire, you have to put it in a 401k and risk losing big chunks of it during each business cycle. When the government spends money, it is buying up resources that could be put to more productive use, serving the needs of consumers. Every bit of steel, fuel, and electric components that is used to build warships, tanks, planes, bombs, and guns, and every potential worker that is turned into a soldier and shipped overseas to kill and be killed is a massive waste of resources that could instead be used to serve consumer needs, not to mention the loss of life. The modern welfare warfare state could literally not be possible without the Federal Reserve. The Fed was supposedly created by the federal government to prevent bank runs. It was supposed to be a lender of last resort and create stability. Yet 16 years, just 16 years after the Fed's creation, the Fed's low interest rates fueled the roaring 20s and led to the greatest stock market crash in history. Then the Fed's tight money worsened the Depression. The Fed, created supposedly to shore up capitalism, has become an instrument of government economic management not so different from a socialist planning board. A tiny handful of powerful people attempt to fine-tune the entire economy. Its main mission has become continually goosing economic activity through infusions of new cash to maintain the illusion that good times will never falter. The result isn't stability, but one economic bubble after another. The Fed's manipulations fit well with President Obama's stimulus spending efforts, but that didn't do the trick as we saw during the Great Recession. The post-recession recovery was among the weakest ever. Japan's central bank tried the same stimulus for the past 15 years since its economic crash. That didn't work either. Instead of following Japan's example, we should learn from Canada's history, believe it or not. The Canadians had no central bank when the Great Depression began, just private banks issuing currency backed by gold. During the 1930s, not even one single Canadian bank failed. Thousands failed in the United States. Look, Ron Paul did not write a book called Audit the Fed or If the Fed Exists. He wrote a book called End the Fed. I've got a copy of this book on my bookshelf, and I highly recommend it to you if you want an in-depth look at why the Federal Reserve is a horrible institution that all libertarians are against. Definitely check it out.
Have you subscribed to the Lava Flow on iTunes or any mobile device yet? Then what's wrong with you? Go to thelavaflow.com/subscribe so you don't miss a minute of the show. And while you're subscribing, make sure to leave me a 5-star rating and review the show to help others find our podcast. thelavaflow.com/subscribe.
It's time to shake up your podcast feed, folks, by subscribing to Lions of Liberty, the only libertarian variety show out there. Spend Mondays with me, Mark Claire, as I feature in-depth interviews with great names in the libertarian community and fun roundtable discussions.
Electric Liberty Land with me, Brian McWilliams, every Wednesday, your weekly dose of comedy, culture, and liberty.
And Felony Fridays with me, John Odermatt, where I expose injustice in the broken criminal justice system.
Find us on iTunes, Stitcher, and at lionsofliberty.com.
This is Chris Spangle, and I am the host of We Are Libertarians, which you can find in iTunes, Google Play, or at wearelibertarians.com. We are a podcast that brings you all of the irreverence that modern politics deserves by examining current events from a libertarian perspective. So please, check us out at wearelibertarians.com.
What's in the news? The news you need to know from a libertarian perspective.
In trick, not treating news, in Virginia, kids over 12 can be jailed for trick-or-treating. If you've ever handed out treats to eager trick-or-treaters, you've doubtless run into a kid who seems just a bit too old to be ringing your doorbell. Hell, I was going out trick-or-treating on Halloween until I was 16 or 17, mostly to hang out with my friends and have some fun. But some towns in the Hampton Roads area in Virginia appear to have solved that problem. Jail time for offenders. What the actual fuck? Community guidelines posted on the internet lay out the new law. In Chesapeake, the law states, if any person over the age of 12 years shall engage in the activity commonly known as trick-or-treating, or any other activity of similar character or nature under any name whatsoever, he or she shall be guilty of a misdemeanor and shall be punished by a fine of not less than $25 nor more than $100, or by confinement in jail for not more than 6 months, or both. 6 months in jail? For trick-or-treating if you are the arbitrary age of 13 years or older? What is this insanity? This seems to be a rather harsh punishment for a 13-year-old just wanting a Snickers bar. The law also says that anyone of any age can be found guilty of a misdemeanor for trick-or-treating after 8 p.m., period. Those people can face a fine of $10 to $100 or up to 30 days in jail. Look, Chesapeake isn't alone. In Newport News, Norfolk, Portsmouth, and Suffolk, it's also against the law for anyone older than 12 to trick-or-treat. In Newport News and Norfolk, they can be found guilty of a Class 4 misdemeanor. However, that penalty would only involve a fine. The Chesapeake's own website states that Chesapeake police staff will focus on making sure the evening is safe for everyone, not actively seeking out violations of the time or age limits. For example, a 13-year-old safely trick-or-treating with a younger sibling is not going to have any issues. Isn't this just fucking typical? Legislators make an arbitrary law based on an arbitrary number of rotations around the sun for someone, and then the legislators' bulldogs will arbitrarily enforce the arbitrary law. Makes sense to me. In Florida Man news, a Florida man faces prison for making grills without a license. Dental grills have been around for thousands of years. Rich Etruscan women were fitting their teeth with gold as early as the 7th century BC. The service was not carried out by a dentist, but by a goldsmith. But in 2018, a Florida man faces charges for doing something similar without a dental license. Alan Turner, 26, of Leesburg, tells WFTV that he used to charge customers several $100s to make custom grills. His business came to a screeching halt when he was visited by a Leesburg police officer and an investigator from the State Department of Health, who informed him that what he was doing was illegal. Florida's definition of dentistry practices includes the taking of an impression of the human tooth, teeth, or jaws directly or indirectly and by any means or method. And so the molds Turner made to create his grills were considered unlicensed dentistry. He was fined $1,000 and ordered to stop. He stopped as ordered, but it was already too late. In September, the state's attorney's office charged him with 1 felony count of practicing dentistry without a license and 1 misdemeanor count of public nuisance, saying that he turned his home into a dental laboratory. Turner says he was unaware that his actions were illegal. He had seen others doing the same thing and did not realize that a license was needed for the process. Police Lieutenant Joey Ozzie appeared to understand that confusion, saying, "I think people make assumptions when things are just cosmetic in nature, that it doesn't necessarily require licensing." Turner was arrested and taken to the Lake County Jail, where he was later released on bond. He'll have to appear in court October 22nd. From the felony charge alone, Turner faces up to 5 years in prison and a $5,000 fine. Ignorance of the law may be no excuse, as the saying goes, but it seems absurdly disproportionate that he might have to spend years among violent criminals for a non-violent crime, supposed crime. And it's overzealous to punish him as though he had been attempting to diagnose patients or perform surgeries, cleanings, and other practices typical of a licensed dentist. Civil liberties lawyer Harvey Silverglate famously estimated in his book that the average working professional unwittingly commits an average of 3 felonies a day. Definitely check out that book. It's called 3 Felonies a Day, and I'm sure Turner can relate to that. Zencash has changed their name to Horizon to better represent their transition from a pure cryptocurrency to a pioneering platform that protects consumer data. They're focusing more on the wider vision of what Zencash was all about. The new name, Horizon, reinforces that the project is forward-thinking and visionary and will broaden the horizons of what the community can accomplish in the world using the platform. Not only is it one of the best privacy-oriented cryptocurrencies with zero-knowledge technology built into it, but they also have private chat over their network. And soon, Horizon will include the ability to publish information and go anywhere on the web, all with complete privacy. They are working toward the day when anyone will be able to build privacy-based applications on the Horizon platform and generate income from them. This will allow Horizon to bring thousands of real-life services to the community. Services that provide freedom, utility, and privacy. The unique spelling of Horizon is a nod to their heritage and recognizes that they remain committed to the vision that their project was built upon. Their coin and ticker symbol remains Zen. So Zencash is now Horizon, and Horizon is bringing privacy to life. You can learn more at horizon.global. That's HORIZEN.global. In Do It for the Children news, California state lawmakers recently passed a bill forcing restaurants to offer specific beverages to children. Governor Jerry Brown signed the legislation, which passed easily in both the Senate and Assembly at the end of September. Though SB 1192 allows customers to order other drinks upon request, the Golden State is now mandating that only unflavored milk and water be listed as default beverages on menus. A provision also allows for non-dairy fluid milk substitutes containing under 130 calories. According to the new law, violations of the rule will be punishable by fines up to $500. The first violation shall result in a notice of violation. A second violation within a 5-year period from the notice of violation shall be punishable by a fine of not more than $250. For a third or subsequent violation within a 5-year period, the fine shall be not more than $500. As with most government policies that restrict individual and economic freedom, lawmakers appealed to the public good in order to justify the new regulations. According to Section 1 of the legislation, from 1990 to 2016, inclusive, the obesity rate in California increased by 250%. While the increase was greatest from 1990 until 2003, recent trends suggest a continued increase in obesity among children. The solution, they argue, is to support parents' efforts to feed their children nutritiously by ensuring healthy beverages are the default option in children's meals in restaurants, ultimately improving children's health by setting nutritional standards for restaurants' children's meals. While rampant consumption of unhealthy food may be a public health issue, California would do well to rely more heavily on approaches beyond bans. For example, ample scientific research shows that educational campaigns, which empower people with knowledge rather than making choices for them by force, reduced youth smoking rates. Education, not force, is the answer. Whether it's dictating who must serve on the boards of private companies or attempting to regulate speech, California's lawmakers continue to condescend to citizens, assuming that they know better. I would be highly suspect of any libertarian podcaster who lives in the Socialist Republic of California. Mark Claire. In war, what is it good for news? With the war in Afghanistan now overtaking the Vietnam War as the longest conflict in American history, a new YouGov survey reveals that the majority of Americans would support drawing U.S. involvement to a close and bringing the troops back home where they belong. The results show that if President Trump were to announce that he was ordering the withdrawal of troops from Afghanistan, he would have the support of 61% of Americans. A parallel survey of current and former armed forces personnel found that such a move would be even more popular, with 69% of armed forces personnel in support. By contrast, only 20 to 21% in both groups would oppose the withdrawal. Look, more than 17 years of the conflict, few people believe that the U.S. and military involvement in the nation has been a success at all. Just 22% of the Americans and 24% of current and former service personnel say the mission in Afghanistan has been successful. That's it. Less than a quarter. A further 31 to 33% say it's been neither successful nor unsuccessful, while 37% of the public and 40% of veterans say that it's been unsuccessful. Many critics of the war in Afghanistan have blamed the lack of success on the absence of a strategy for operations in the country. Such a view seems to be shared by the American public, with a majority, 55%, saying that the U.S. does not have a strategic objective for the conflict, as do 59% of veterans. It is good to finally see the majority of Americans on the right side of morality for a change. The Afghanistan war, much like all of our modern wars, are disasters and should never have been started in the first place. The U.S. has no business being over there, especially since all of the evidence shows that having the U.S. involved in the Middle East only makes you and I less safe in the long run.
One of the largest reaching liberty programs today is Free Talk Live, with a 3-hour radio program 7 nights a week on more than 180 radio stations across the country. They are so influential on talk radio that they are the number 27 radio program in the country, according to Talkers Magazine. They also have a daily podcast that's been voted Best Political Podcast 5 times by podcastawards.com. The hosts of Free Talk Live are street preachers for the ideas of liberty. They take the message of peace, liberty, and cryptocurrency to the masses on the radio, where they are not preaching to the choir. You can listen via podcast or live via audio streaming or the Twitch or YouTube channels at freetalklive.com. I listen to their podcast myself every single morning when I get up to get a fresh perspective on news and very, very strong libertarian perspectives. Make sure to add them to your feed at freetalklive.com.
In socialism news, inflation in Venezuela is projected to reach 10 million% next year as the economy collapses and the government grows increasingly authoritarian. Venezuela, the country with the lowest wages in the region and an unprecedented humanitarian crisis, has broken the record for the highest inflation in the Americas, to such an extent that by 2019, hyperinflation will reach the astounding figure of 10 million%. This is due, according to the Venezuelan economist Jose Toro Hardy, to aberrant public policies full of state controls. Toro Hardy explained that with the new estimate, Venezuela is among the worst inflated cases that humanity has known in its entire history. He explained, "This is the result of aberrant public policies and unrestrained populism. The government of Venezuela has incurred an unmanageable fiscal deficit to finance the cash flow of PDVSA, which is the oil company of the market. The government has resorted to demanding from the Central Bank of Venezuela that it make immense issues of money without support, that money is incorporated into the country's money supply and consequently demands goods. But since there are no goods to be had, because they've destroyed the productive apparatus through expropriations, price controls, through all kinds of socialist measures, what they have achieved is that there is a shortage of absolutely everything. In Venezuela, there are no medicines, there is no food, but the result is that with this huge money supply demanding goods that do not exist, the only thing that is achieved is that prices go up." Given this situation, 91% of Venezuelan families live below the poverty line, and 65% of them face extreme poverty. Hardy said, "It's very difficult to live in these conditions. First, because the country has become impoverished, because there is no salary that can withstand this increase in prices, and that adds to the scarcity of almost any product. People are getting desperate and living in terrible anguish, and for that reason, many Venezuelans simply choose to leave the country." This is socialism, folks. It has led to the downfall of many governments throughout history and has led to two of the most impoverished countries in the world today, Venezuela and North Korea. These are not exceptions to the rules, folks. These are the rules of socialism. In bad boy news, 2 Detroit police officers are facing home invasion charges after they allegedly stormed into a man's home without a warrant and hauled him off to jail. The cops' alleged actions are horrifying, but according to Reason magazine, their case is an example of the system working the way that it should, or at least close to that thanks to body cameras. And I call bullshit on that. This is not a case of the system working, quite the opposite. The system is supposed to stop this sort of shit from happening, yet we're seeing a rise in police abuse cases. The system is not working, period. But I wouldn't expect anything else from Reason magazine. This home invasion occurred this past January when Sergeant Paul Glaza and Officer Bradley Clark, both members of a burglary task force, knocked on 28-year-old Tasher Cornelius' door. Cornelius said, "I was in my house making a sandwich and the police came to my home searching for a suspect named Mike." Cornelius is a convicted felon, but he wasn't who the cops were looking for. He told them there was no Mike in the house, but officers didn't change their mind. Cornelius said, "They couldn't provide me with a valid search warrant. They didn't have my permission to enter my property." He closed the door on them. Then Cornelius said, "They kicked in the door and came in with their weapons drawn. One handcuffed me right away and they ransacked my house." The officers had noticed a taser lying on the table and allegedly used that to justify taking him to jail, where Cornelius said he was held for 36 hours. He said, "My lawyer assured me that there were no charges against me. Finally, they just released me and I walked out of there." The officers had been placed on administrative leave. Last week, things got a whole lot worse for them. Per the Detroit News, Glaza and Clark were charged Friday in 36th District Court with second-degree home invasion, misconduct in office, malicious destruction of property over $200, and entering without a homeowner's permission in connection with the alleged incident on January 22nd. Both officers were released on bond. A statement from Assistant Wayne County Prosecutor Maria Miller seems to corroborate Cornelius' recollection of how events transpired. Miller said the officers entered a home without a search warrant. They also did not have an arrest warrant for the person they were searching for, who was not in the house. They instead detained and arrested the homeowner. If people with badges are coming into people's homes without warrants, and that's how the system is supposed to work, then I would fucking hate to see how the system doesn't work. Fuck Reason magazine in the neck.
Exercise your free market muscles by going to thelavaflow.com/support and giving a per episode donation of as little as $1 an episode, or use Bitcoin. Get exclusive content, rewards, and help the Lava Flow become fiscally neutral while providing you more content. thelavaflow.com/support.
Are those dry, boring, run-of-the-mill political talk shows putting you to sleep on your commute or at work? Are you ready for some fun?
Look no further. Blast Off with Johnny Rocket is a Seattle-based podcast expressing viewpoints of free markets, voluntary exchange, badass music, wicked banner, and of course, drinking.
The Blast Off doesn't shy from the truth, but always brings the party.
Let's rock and roll, Raylene.
Bring it on, Johnny.
You can check us out at thelaunchpadmedia.com/blastoff.
Again, that's thelaunchpadmedia.com/blastoff.
Launchpad Media. Always launching ideas in your direction.
And now I'm crying over you.
Statist's Gonna State.
This will be a bit of a different take on Statist Gonna State because while it is talking about a statist organization, it's not a government organization. I am, of course, talking about Facebook and their purge of 800 pages and accounts. Look, I'm no fan of Alex Jones, but he said something that is clearly coming true, possibly for the first time in his life. Gay frogs. He said, "I'm just the test case. After they silence me, they'll come after many others. They want to control and censor the internet." Now, this reminds me of the speech given by the German Lutheran pastor Martin Niemöller when he said, "First, they came for the communists, and I did not speak out because I was not a communist. Then they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak out for me. Well, I am speaking out." According to Facebook, they went after these accounts because they were either fake accounts or they used spam tactics. The social networking giant removed 559 pages and 251 Facebook accounts over breaking the site's rules for spam and coordinated inauthentic behavior. Nathaniel Gleicher, Facebook's head of cybersecurity policy, and Oscar Rodriguez, a Facebook product manager, wrote in a blog post announcing this purge. Many were using fake accounts or multiple accounts with the same names and posted massive amounts of content across a network of groups and pages to drive traffic to their websites. Many used the same techniques to make their content appear more popular on Facebook than it really was. Others were ad farms using Facebook to mislead people into thinking that they were forums for legitimate political debate. These supposed bad actors, Facebook said, would post the same clickbait posts in dozens of Facebook groups, often hundreds of times in a short period, in a bid to drum up traffic for their websites, get a higher priority for their content on the company's news feed, and boost the engagement for their fake Facebook pastes and posts, making the content seem more popular on Facebook than it really was. The social network did not disclose the motivations in the past, but says that given the proximity to the U.S. midterm elections, it wanted to give some details about the types of behavior that led to this action. Many of these deleted pages were libertarian-leaning pages, including many pages that I followed. Here's a partial list of some of the libertarianish sites that were pulled down. This list is not an endorsement by me of the content of these pages, as several of these pages I had many disagreements with. Nation in Distress, 3.2 million followers. The Free Thought Project, 3.1 million followers. The Anti-Media, 2.1 million followers. Police the Police, 1.9 million followers. Cop Block, 1.7 million followers. Filming Cops, 1.7 million followers. In the Drug War. V is for Voluntary, 160,000 followers. Legalizing Cannabis. End the War on Drugs, 460,000 followers. Fuck the Government, 168,000 followers. Punk Rock Libertarians, 190,000 followers. Rachel Blevins, 69,000 followers. Now, Twitter followed this a few hours later by removing at least some of the same groups in the list that Facebook purged. Rachel Blevins, one of the people who had her page blocked, she's also a correspondent for RT America, and she said, "Today I was locked out of my Facebook account for 4 hours, and my public page was unpublished. There appears to be no explanation for this other than the vague claim from Facebook that my page was taken down because it was administered by a fake account, misleading users, or violating the Facebook spam policies. I am the only person who publishes posts on my page. The only posts I publish are articles I've written or videos of my reports, and I only post 1 or 2 times a day, which rules out all of the claims that I have violated Facebook's policies. My page had nearly 70,000 followers before it was taken down. I've poured the last 4 years into building my page as a journalist, and I've noticed recently that the reach seems to have been stifled and that the engagement on my post was down significantly. I know that I'm not the only one who has become a victim of this purge, and there are hundreds of other pages, many of which had millions of followers, that have been taken down with no warning and no explanation." Nicholas Bernabe, founder of the Anti-Media, said, "Our approach generally is to cover stories and angles that corporate media underreport or misreport and amplify activist and anti-war voices and stories. All of our content is professionally fact-checked and edited. I got into this line of work because I felt there was a need for media that challenged mainstream assumptions and biases in politics. I wanted to shed light on corruption and wrongdoing against oppressed peoples and cover the harsh truth about American foreign policy. Over the last 28 days, we reached over 7 million people on Facebook. The timing of this purge is rather dubious in my view, coming shortly before the midterm elections. This could be an attempt by Facebook itself to affect the outcome of the coming elections. The Twitter suspension caught me by surprise. I can only speculate that these suspensions are a coordinated effort to stifle our message ahead of the coming election. Look, this is another reason I have slowly been weaning my usage of Facebook down over the last few months. As of now, I almost only use Facebook for my two businesses, posting information for Pax Libertas and its various podcasts, and using a second account for communicating with audiobook publishers and others in that industry. I do very rarely post a general item like I did this week about taking my boys to the gun range with pictures and videos. When I check notifications, I only touch those that mention me directly or have something to do with one of the businesses I run. I have not just scrolled through Facebook mindlessly in a long time. I used to scroll through Facebook looking for news items to use on this show, but I've replaced that entirely using Feedly, with RSS feeds for the various news sources that I was getting information from anyway, and it's so much faster. I can't tell you how freeing it's been to limit my exposure to Facebook. I hope to wean myself down even further. My next step will be to not touch the Facebook app on my phone until the notifications are at 99+. I got that idea from Ian Freeman of Free Talk Live. After that, it will be to remove the app from my phone entirely and only accessing Facebook on my computer. I've already lowered my dependence on Facebook Messenger way down since I use Wire, Signal, and Telegram for more than 90% of my direct communications these days. Hell, I even use Wire to communicate with my wife and kids. My eventual goal is to be able to pass off even the business side of using Facebook to a virtual assistant or an employee once I can afford one. I'm confident that in the next 6 months I should be able to do this. We should not be supporting anyone, government or private entity, that sweepingly silences voices the way that Facebook does. Yes, I know it's their platform and they have that right, but I'm exercising my right to tell Facebook to fuck off. Thank you for listening to the show this week. As always, I need to thank my favorite leaf peeper, Jessica, for her help with the show. For the show notes to this episode, where I put links and other information that's been on the show, go to thelavaflow.com/108. I have a new supporter this week. Armando D became a $1 per episode supporter through Patreon. Awesome. Thank you so much, Armando. And thanks to Armando and all of my other awesome supporters, I'm at $300 per episode, or 60% of the way towards my next goal of $500 per episode. Thanks for all your support, guys, really. Remember, when I hit this next goal, I will be upping the content I bring you from half an hour per week to a full hour. I know you want more content from me, and I want to give it to you. So add your pledge today to help me bring you twice the lava flow that you're getting today. So exercise your free market muscles by going to thelavaflow.com/support and giving a per episode donation of as little as $1 an episode using Federal Reserve notes through Patreon or Bitcoin through Coinbase. I want to be able to bring you more content soon, so make sure to add your donation today to help make that happen. I have no new Apple podcast reviews this week, but if you have a minute and you want to hear your review read right here on the show, please go to thelavaflow.com/Apple and leave me a rating and a review. All the cool kids are doing it. Thank you to everyone who's left me a rating and a review so far. You guys rock. To all of you who haven't, can you guys help me out and go leave a review for me? Go to thelavaflow.com/Apple to do that now. Until next time, keep striking the root.
Thank you for listening to The Lava Flow at thelavaflow.com. Don't miss an episode. Subscribe now at thelavaflow.com/subscribe. This has been a Pax Libertas Productions podcast.